I never should have agreed to house sit for my brother while he was out of town. It was supposed to be an easy gig, just stop by once a day to water plants and collect the mail. But now I wish I had turned him down. If I had known then what I know now, I never would have set foot in that house. The first couple of days went smoothly. I'd swing by after work, tend to the plants, check for mail. The house was located in a nice suburban neighborhood, so I figured I didn't have anything to worry about. But on the third night, things took a turn. It was late when I arrived, nearly 10 p.m. I inserted the key into the front door lock and stepped inside. The house was dark except for a faint blue glow coming from the living room. As I made my way toward it, I realized the glow was from the TV, even though it was off. Strange, I thought. I shrugged it off and went about watering the plants. But as I turned to leave a bit later, some movement on the TV caught my eye. The screen showed 4 small boxes, each displaying a video feed of a different room. And one of those rooms was the living room I was standing in. My blood ran cold. This was a live video feed. Someone had installed security cameras throughout the house, and I was being recorded. I peered closer at the screen, looking for any sign of cameras. That's when I noticed the tiny lens peeking out from a hole in the ceiling lamp. My heart pounded. There had to be cameras hiding in plain sight all over the house. I got out of there as fast as I could, double-checking the doors were locked behind me. As I drove away, my mind was reeling. Who had access to those camera feeds? Why were they filming my brother's house? Were they watching me right now? I didn't return the next day, or the day after that. I wish I had gone straight to the police, but something held me back. Maybe it was fear of what they would find if they investigated the house and its creepy surveillance system. But the following week, my brother returned home and called me over right away. His usually tidy house was a mess, with furniture overturned and drawers flung open. He had been robbed. My blood turned to ice as I realized the chilling truth. Someone had been watching the camera feeds, waiting for the house to be empty before breaking in. And I'd been caught on tape, watering plants and unlocking doors, completely unaware I was being observed. Over the following days, more unsettling discoveries came to light. My brother told me he hadn't installed any security cameras. Someone else had. The police also informed us that the video equipment was running on a closed circuit feed. The only place those recordings could be viewed was inside the house. So someone had broken in once to set it all up, then returned at the right moment to rob the place, using the footage to monitor the house and my unsuspecting actions. I shuddered, imagining them sitting there, spying on me from some dark, unseen corner. The police swept the house but found no trace of the intruder. They told us the cameras had probably been recording for weeks before I ever set foot inside. Just thinking about some creep watching private moments in my brother's home made my skin crawl. Though there was no proof, I couldn't help feeling like I was the one who had led them right to the valuables they stole. Maybe they had been waiting for someone naive enough to let their guard down. No signs of forced entry were found. Only an unlocked door and me, obliviously watering plants on tape. It could have happened any time I was there. I cooperated fully with the police investigation, but the perpetrator was never found. My brother had to replace the locks and install a real home security system. As for me, I never house. Sat again after that. Just imagining being watched on some hidden camera still gives me chills. No neighborhood or house is as safe as you think. You truly never know who might be lurking, watching everything you do. I learned that lesson the hard way. I was driving home from work one day last year. I worked in the city and lived about 20 miles away, so I'd often hit rush hour on my way home. On this particular day, it was pretty bad. I was merging onto the freeway, and when I did, I accidentally cut somebody off. I didn't mean to cut them off, but it was so busy. I made a split-second decision and simply misjudged my space. I felt bad when it happens, and within a minute, I'd forgotten all about it. I remained on a freeway for a good 20 minutes and noticed that the car behind me was following extremely close. It didn't concern me. I realized he must be mad about me cutting him off and figured I deserved it. Nothing bothered me until I exited off the freeway at my exit, and the car did as well. It was a kind of old, beat-up looking car. The driver appeared to be a man, but other than that, I couldn't make out much detail. He remained extremely close to my car. I guess there was a slim chance he wasn't following me, so I took the next turn. But he did as well. I didn't want this not following me all the way home, so I pulled into a gas station to see what would happen. He followed me in. I guess I thought he wouldn't do anything if there were other people around, so I parked at a parking space. He drove his car right behind mine to block me in. Now I felt dumb. This was not one of my brightest ideas. The man got out of his car. He looked to be in his 30s and had blonde hair. He walked in a fast pace towards my car. I locked my doors. He came up to my window and knocked on it. He knocked so hard I thought the window might break. He started yelling and cursing at me. There were a few people at the gas station, and they started to look over at what was going on. I thought about calling the police, but after some people from the gas station started to approach us, the man got back in his car and drove off. I was relieved to see him drive away, and I pulled out a couple minutes later and went home. I couldn't stop looking behind me on the drive back, but he didn't follow me anymore. Some drivers have T-road rage, and I've learned to drive much safer since then. Earlier this year, I was really into riding my bike. I ride for about an hour every morning down my local streets, which were pretty quiet. One day, I was about 20 minutes into the ride and saw a car behind me start to approach. I always rode close to the side of the road, so there was plenty of space for cars to pass. However, this car went really slow behind me and then drove so close to me that there was only about 3 or 4 feet between us. I moved over to the side of the road as far as I could. They then drove past me. It was a silver Chevy Malibu, I remember, and I was a little irritated, but I kept riding. Not even 5 minutes later, the car came back from the other direction and passed me again. This time swerving to my side of the road in the opposite lane from what he was supposed to be in, and drove so close to me that it was about 6 feet from colliding with me. I almost stopped as I was afraid he might hit me. When he passed, I saw it was a man wearing a black ski mask. Now I was getting a little worried, and I didn't know what this guy's problem was. I thought he might pass me again and maybe try to hit me. Several minutes later, I heard the car behind me again and looked over my shoulder to see the silver car. This time I pulled all the way over to the side of the road, stopped my bike, and stood next to him. The car began to speed up then and get closer to me. I stepped off the road as far as I could before it went into a ditch, which was about 4 feet of space. The car zoomed past me at probably 40 or 50 miles per hour, coming just a few feet from me. As soon as it passed, I got on my bike and rode home as fast as I could. I was able to make it home without seeing the car again. I stopped riding for a few weeks, but after that, I got back into it again. Nothing like that has ever happened to me before or since. This happened to me almost 2 years ago. I was driving home with my friend after doing some homework at a coffee shop. We took a road for about 10 miles before turning left on a more quiet road. When we did, we noticed the truck did the same. We didn't really make anything of this, but once we turned right at the next intersection, the truck did as well, and that got our attention. Maybe I'm just a paranoid person, but whenever I drive at night, I always pay attention to the cars behind me. And if they turn when I do after following the road for a short distance, it came to a fairly busy road that we had to cross. When we did, the truck crossed it as well. The next turn was for my friend's street where his house was. It was my car, but my friend was driving it. Once we turned, we saw that the truck turned as well. Both of us got really excited and kind of creeped out as well, saying that the truck was following us. We thought maybe it was his neighbor, so he started to pull over in front of his house, but the truck pulled over in front of his house, but the truck pulled over as well. That confirmed 100 to us that we were being followed. For a second, I wanted to go out and confront whoever was in the truck, but my friend talked me out of it. We didn't know why they would follow us. Nothing was wrong with the car, and we hadn't cut anyone off. It had been a pretty normal drive. My friend pulled out of his street, and so did the truck. He said he knew a route that would confuse the truck and started driving in a large residential neighborhood that was nearby. We took lefts and rights, and after about 10 minutes, we were finally able to lose the truck. We drove around a couple more minutes and then headed back to his house. When we got to his house, I dropped him off and started to drive home. When I did, I noticed a truck with the lights off peel out and start driving behind me. The truck was back. I started to drive home and was planning to take a really long and confusing way, when I suddenly remembered what you're supposed to do when you get followed, which is drive to a police station. I started driving to the police station, and when I arrived, the truck did not follow me in. So after a couple minutes, I left and drove home. I took a really long way home just to be safe and looked over my shoulders every 2 seconds. I was able to make it home safely. I don't even know why we were being followed in the first place. I just hope I never see that truck again. I don't know why I decided to take that late night walk through the park. Maybe it was to clear my head after a long day at work, or maybe I just wanted some fresh air before turning in for the night. Whatever the reason, it's a decision that still haunts me to this day. As I strolled down the lamplit path, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching me. The park was empty at this hour, making me acutely aware of every little sound. The chirping crickets, the wind rustling through the trees, the distant hum of traffic. I picked up my pace, suddenly anxious to get home. That's when I first noticed him, a tall figure standing motionless under a tree up ahead. I froze, squinting into the shadows. As my eyes adjusted, I could make out his slender frame and pale skin that seemed to glow under the moonlight. Unease washed over me. No one in their right mind would be hanging out in a deserted park this late at night. I averted my eyes and walked faster, hoping to pass by without incident. I didn't get far before a bone-chilling voice rang out. Leaving so soon, it rasped. Every hair on my body stood at attention. Slowly, I glanced back over my shoulder. The man was now standing in the middle of the path, head cocked to one side, studying me intently. My heart pounded against my ribs. I opened my mouth to respond, but no words came out. I just needed to get as far away from this creep as possible. Without thinking, I broke into a sprint, my feet pounding against the pavement. I didn't get far before a hand shot out of the shadows and grabbed my wrist, wrenching me to an abrupt stop. I shrieked as my eyes landed on its owner, a disheveled older woman with wild gray hair. Her grip was unnaturally strong and ice cold. "Don't run, dearie," she rasped, her voice like nails on a chalkboard. "We just want to play." She gestured behind me. I whirled around to see 4 more people emerging from the trees, their eyes fixed hungrily on me. These couldn't be normal people. They moved in that strange, jerky manner that resembled a marionette on tangled strings. Their mouths were spread in inhuman grins that revealed mouths full of pointed teeth. I thrashed against the old woman's iron grip. This had to be a nightmare. I clamped my eyes shut, willing myself to wake up in the comfort of my bed. But the claws digging into my wrist felt terribly real. Laughter echoed around me, a guttural hyena-like cackling that turned my blood to ice. The creatures were toying with me, like a cat batting around a mouse before going in for the kill. I knew then that I wouldn't be making it home tonight. Mustering my courage, I drove my elbow back with all my might into the old woman's ribs. She let out a surprised yelp, her grip finally loosening. I didn't look back. I just ran blindly into the night as the creature's talons snatched at my heels. Their footsteps pounded behind me as I sprinted through the winding park trails. My lungs burned, but I didn't dare stop. I just had to make it back to the lights of the neighborhood. I'd be safe under the streetlights, I told myself. I was so focused on the street ahead that I didn't see the man from the path materialize in front of me. We collided head-on and I toppled to the ground with a shriek, skidding several feet across the concrete path. For a moment, All I could do was lay there gasping for air, my body throbbing. The man loomed over me, his frame blotting out the moonlight. "Thought you could get away, huh?" he snickered. He crouched down, his face just inches from mine. His breath reeked of rotting flesh. Behind him, I could see the others shuffling closer, their shark-like grins growing wider. This was it. I was going to die here, torn limb from limb by these. I thought of my family, my friends. I thought of my family, my friends, my coworkers, all the people who would soon be asking questions that no one could answer. As the man reached for me with his claw-like hands, rage suddenly boiled inside me. If this was how it ended, then I sure as hell wouldn't make it easy for them. With a primal scream, I drove my foot up with all my might, right between the man's legs. He shrieked and doubled over. Not wasting a second, I scrambled to my feet and tore off just as the others were descending on me. I raced towards the park entrance, my arms pumping at my sides. Their enraged howls echoed behind me. I could hear their footsteps gaining ground. Just a little farther now. I was so close. I finally burst out of the park onto the empty suburban street. Floodlights from the surrounding houses illuminated the entire block. I glanced back to see the creatures skulking at the edge of the park entrance, their pale faces twisted in anger. But they made no move to follow me beyond the perimeter of the darkened park. Gasping for breath, I collapsed onto the curb, my whole body trembling. I sat hunched over with my head in my hands, unable to comprehend what I had just experienced. Had it been real? Or had my mind simply played tricks on me? As I sat there recovering, I became aware of shuffling footsteps approaching. A pair of scuffed work boots appeared at the edge of my vision. My head snapped up to see a middle-aged man in a utility uniform looking down at me with concern. "Miss, are you all right?" I opened my mouth, but no words came out. I wanted to tell him everything. The cold eyes watching me in the dark, the creatures emerging from the trees, the way they had chased me through the night. But it all seemed so absurd now under the golden glow of the streetlights. So instead, I simply nodded and choked out. "I'm okay, thank you." The man studied me for a moment before asking if he could call someone to give me a ride home. I assured him I'd be fine now. With a skeptical glance back at the dark park, he finally carried on his way, reminding me to get home safe. On shaky legs, I stood and hurried across the street to my apartment building. As soon as I was inside my lit apartment with the door securely bolted, I collapsed onto my bed, exhausted. That night, I lay awake for hours, listening for any strange sounds at my door or window. I knew deep down those things were still out there lurking in the shadows. And the next time I crossed paths with them, I might not make it out alive. So now I stick to the daytime and avoid the park at all costs. But sometimes at night, I still hear that sinister laughter carried on the wind. And I wonder if they're hunting for me, their next victim.